Welcome back. Now it's time for our weekly energy update with Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy. All yours, Dan.
Well, thank you for that, Teresa. And it looks like we have, as I predicted last week, some increases in gas prices, especially diesel, which went up about an average of about 7 cents a liter in some parts of the country, Newfoundland, about 5 cents a liter in the West, and about 3 to 4 cents a liter in Atlantic, rather in Quebec and Ontario. We're going to continue to see a little bit higher pressure prices for gasoline as well, although not as much. Of course, we've had the unmistakable event of Monday when the new president, President Trump, took over. And of course, right back to where he was from 2016 to 2020. You know, Teresa, I served a number of years working for another company called Gas Buddy. Most of my work was done in the United States. And every time he tweeted, that is Trump, every time he made a musing, markets would fluctuate radically and dramatically. I sense that perhaps we should be taking what he says seriously, but not taking it to heart as if the world is coming to an end. That's why I believe, and I will say it here now, first and foremost, I think we're looking at, discussion of tariffs beginning on the 1st of February, but probably not being implemented for several months. And that's because increasingly, it's becoming pretty obvious that the Americans do not, in fact, have the largest oil reserves in the world. That's left to Venezuela. That's left to Saudi Arabia. It's left to Canada. Long before the United States reaches fifth or sixth. Natural gas, we're intertwined. Both Canada imports and re-imports its own gas, especially in Eastern Canada and the U.S., although it has the Marcellus, the Utica shales. Much of Western Canada produces and sends down what could be considered about a 75-25% relationship in terms of utilization. And we do have, thankfully, infrastructure in Eastern Canada to accommodate more Western natural gas to something called the main line. But it does bring us to the other question. The main line, which is owned by Enbridge, it was actually going to be the Energy East pipeline. And now we have the Nova Scotia Premier saying maybe it's time to rethink that. All of the assumptions we've had over the past 10 years of blocking pipelines, of dumbing down and ignoring and trivializing our oil and gas, and in many respects, maligning it, as only Canada has done, with the current crop of people under Justin Trudeau, yes, Mark Carney, and Stephen Guilbeault and Chrystia Freeland, the rest, are now having to beat a major retreat. That's because our Trump card, if you call it that, is in fact our energy, our oil and our gas, and it belongs to all Canadians. That's why I think diplomacy and careful consideration of whatever the president says has to be first and foremost a primary consideration. And we also have to have a competent government that has the confidence of the people, which this current federal Liberal NDP government does not have. And for that reason, anything that's said now has to be taken with a grain of salt. That's why I think we're going to need those 7 months to have a new government. Canadians wake up and smell the coffee and get a brand new government. In that process, we'll see stabilization of energy prices and perhaps a recovery of the years lost in terms of our prosperity. But I digress. We're going to continue to see energy prices across the country go up a little bit, despite what President Trump is saying. I would say an average increase of about 2 cents a liter on gasoline and about 5 cents a liter again on diesel, mostly due to the cold weather, but also a weak Canadian dollar. That means that if you're paying currently between $1.68 and $1.75 or $1.80 for diesel, and a little higher in Atlantic Canada, look for that to go up about an average of 4, maybe even 5 cents a liter. In addition, next week, we're already starting to see markets reflect that. Gasoline, some regions of the country may not move at all. Like we know that Saskatchewan and sometimes Alberta, if anything, gas retailers tend to compress that 8-cent retail margin and lose money because they're selling a lot more beef jerky, or they're selling a lot more of, wine, spirits, whatever the case may be in those C-stores that they have. Nevertheless, sooner or later, they have to come up for air. When they do, it means higher prices are inevitable. Of course, we know that this is a time of season where cold tends to dominate prices, especially diesel, not so much gasoline, but gasoline is in for the ride as well. We need to understand that the weakness in the Canadian dollar, where it takes 144 pennies to buy a US dollar, adds about 27 cents a liter to the price of gasoline, diesel. Imagine what it's doing to the cost of pretty much everything else that's transported by, rail, transported by jet, transported by truck. All of these things are important to consider. That's why energy affordability, which has long been ignored by our media and friends, is extraordinarily important when it comes to the overall affordability of Canadians. And so for that reason, expect a bit of an increase, not an unpleasant one, but very much expected this time of year. We'll talk a little bit more next week. Thanks, Teresa.